So I'm Dr. Adam Marechka. I'm a clinical psychologist and a clinical health psychologist by training. I'm also a preventive care specialist. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic and Student Affairs for the School of Behavioral Health, and I'm a member of the Loma Linda International Behavioral Health Trauma Team. And then I have a small little private practice at the Behavioral Health Institute where I work with anxiety and trauma-related disorders. Well, number one, you hit it on the head. This is a pandemic, and most of us haven't lived through this before. So it's the fear of the unknown. And as humans, fear of the unknown is activating to our nervous system. So it's normal during this time period for us to be experiencing a little heightened worry and concern. The biggest issue is not allowing that to go into clinical anxiety, to go into a state of panic, to where then we make decisions and make plans that aren't the most effective. But as care providers, the reality is they're the front lines. And we know that this is probably going to get worse. I think that's realistic to assume that. And our care providers are going to take the brunt of this. And my heart goes out to everybody who's working in the healthcare system. I understand that it's concerning because all of us are, spouses and parents and partners as well. And so in the background, we're concerned about family members. We're concerned about high-risk populations. The reality is humans are incredibly resilient. So I've traveled around the world and seen communities hit by really significant situations, including Ebola. So I know, personally from my experience and from research that humans are resilient and we're going to get through this, So at the baseline, it's important to remind ourselves of that, because it's easy to get caught up in the latest news cycle and the social media cycle and to focus on all of these negative stories coming out, and we can lose ourselves in that. And so right now, there's a number of things that I would recommend. One is practicing self-care. And I don't mean the classic self-care that we all talk about but don't do. I would say it's time for extreme self-care, especially with medical providers. And what that means is recognizing that if I've let myself become so depleted that now I'm sick or I'm not able to give good care, that's a pretty negative outcome. So I have to take care of my own health. I have to pay attention to those things that help me function better in an unusual situation such as we have here. So self-care, big time. One of the classic ones is giving yourself time to really decompress. In a situation like this, every day healthcare providers need to take some time and schedule time for themselves to be able to relax a little bit, to allow their nervous system to reset, if you will. Because we're very resilient, but there's things that we can do to improve that. And taking time for ourselves is one of those things. I also really like exercise. Exercise is foundational to our health, but many people don't think of it from a behavioral health standpoint. But from an anxiety and a depression standpoint, exercise is useful, really helpful. The best guess is it really helps the reactivity of the nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. It helps boost our immune system. And so I've told some patients recently and other people that I've talked with, when you go on these little walks to take a break, do it in a mindful way where you're focusing not on the coronavirus, on COVID-19, but you're focusing on the sensation of your body just walking and making contact with the sidewalk or the ground, the sound of birds as they're chirping, beautiful things that catch your attention. So you really allow your nervous system some time to regulate. We're all human, which means we're all susceptible to different challenges at different points in our life. And for individuals that have underlying mental health conditions, this can exacerbate things. Often I work with students, students who come to me for test-taking anxiety. And this is a time when that stress might be heightened because there's additional challenges that they're working on. They might not even know what format their test is going to be. But they know that they need to be flexible. So this is a time when we need to be more caring for ourselves, and if we're struggling, we need to talk to somebody. I like the idea of having networks in your work environment of people that can look out for each other. Like when we travel on the trauma team, we look out for each other. Because all of us suffer at some point in our lives, and it's nice when we have a trusted colleague that can reach out and say, hey, how you doing? Where we can be honest with them, where we don't have to put a false face on it and say everything's okay. This is a stressful time, and I think it is important that we're watching out for each other, and that we're okay saying, hey, we need some help. As we look into community resources, even locally, I think that it's important for us to realize that there are some positives out of this. Just this last weekend, we had, I've got three young boys, and we had games canceled and get-togethers canceled. And my wife and I were talking at the end of the weekend, and we haven't spent that much time as a family in a long time. So even though the overall situation isn't the best with COVID, the reality is there's going to be these little points where we can look at a positive outcome. And I think it's important to do that. It helps us. It helps with our resiliency when we're able to do that. Well, right now, it's been nice. I did a little search over the last day. There's a number of websites that have documents on how to manage anxiety. Even the CDC, if you go to cdc.gov, they have a nice set of documents for healthcare responders or first responders, how to manage situations. I would encourage people to call their local clinics. If they're interested in an appointment, many clinics are trying to figure out the best way forward. And so they might be limiting face-to-face contact, but right now many clinics across the country are working on telehealth options so that providers can stay in contact with patients and help them through this. It's also a time to think about different things you can do on your own to really de-stress, to really connect. And as healthcare providers, it's easy to get so focused on the stresses of the moment that we don't take time to de-stress. And it goes back to that extreme self-care. This is a time when I would say it's a must. You have to be able to check in with yourself every day and to actively do something that helps soothe you. And so that could be individual, like if you love scrapbooking or if you love putting together albums from vacations, maybe spend a little bit of time doing that, focusing on the wonderful aspects of family gatherings, things that feed you and feed your soul, and that can really help replenish you during this difficult time. Yeah, I see that in two separate ways. One, obviously, is the acceptance and comfort with spiritual care, and I think this is a great time to reach out to our spiritual community. Many of us have home churches that are local. The chaplain services are wonderful. So I think this is a time to anchor ourselves if we have a spiritual tradition. I think that this is also a time when we can celebrate the blue zone and the lifestyle aspect of things, staying healthy, nutritionally, exercise, the community itself. I was a student here in different schools, a faculty, and now I'm an administrator. And I can tell you this institution cares. It cares about its employees. It cares about its students. And so at every level, when I'm involved in meetings, that comes through loud and clear. And so I would hope that all of our providers know that we're trying to put in place things that will help providers, that will help faculty and students. And that's really encouraging. It's very encouraging.